Okay, so we are discussing today clausal sentences. Last class, we entered this topic of clausal sentences. I'll go fast at the beginning of the slides because they are a repetition of what was said before. So clausal sentences are basically sentences composed by one clause. Okay, they are both a sentence and a clause, and we can split them into subject and predicate. And of course, the subject and predicate can also be split into smaller units. So like they study, we have the verb, the predicate. It is also the predicator because it's the head of the predicate. And the predicator, as we said, is the word in charge of the predicate, is the head of the predicate, the most important word of the predicate. Normally, the verb, or if the verb is in a compound tense, the main verb of the compound verb tense. So in the case above, the predicator has nothing to take care of. They study, the predicator is the predicate itself. So we have only one predicator. In I am a student and I bought a car, we discussed the difference between these two sentences, which are also clauses. They are clausal sentences. In I am a student, we saw that I is the subject, am a student is the predicate. Now, the predicator for sure is the verb be, am. We have the predicator here. Now, what is the relation between I and a student? Can I say a student is the object of I, or is it a predicative complement of I? Do you remember this? I'm recalling you the notion of predicative complements and objects. I am a student, or I am happy.
It's a predicative complement because it's
Yes,
qualifying who you are.
yes, it's qualifying, it's referring back, it's describing something behind, something that was left behind in the sentence. Predicative complements can be subjective when they refer back to the subject, and they can be objective when they refer back to the object. In this case here, you can see clearly the kind of equation I equals a student. So a student is a noun phrase that works as a noun. I am something, okay? And it's a predicative complement. In I bought a car, we have bought as the predicator. And a car, would you say this is a predicative complement or the object?
Object.
It's the object. It's the thing that I establish a relationship with by means of the verb to buy. Okay, so a car is also a noun phrase, but the difference between a car and a student is that a car is an external element to the subject, whereas a student is an internal element, is an intrinsic element of the subject. A student equals the subject. A car is the object towards the subject moves in its direction. Okay, so in I am a student and in I bought a car, a student describes I, whereas bought refers to a car. The car was the thing that was bought. So it's a noun phrase with the function of object. From this slide, we can conclude that noun phrases can work either as objects, direct or indirect, and predicative complements, okay? So we have basically three functions of the noun phrase. The noun phrase can be the subject or the object, direct or indirect, and a predicative complement, subjective or objective. Okay, this is just reviewing what we have said last class. Okay, now in they are nice. Okay, what kind of relationship we have? We have nice as an adjective phrase. Okay, now we do not have a noun phrase anymore. We have an adjective phrase but they equals nice. So it's describing they, and it's also a predicative complement, not by means of a noun phrase, but given by an adjective phrase. So it's a subjective predicative complement to the moment that it establishes a relationship with they. They is the subject. Nice is what they are. So it's a subjective predicative complement. In the case of I gave him a book, we have the subject and the predicate, gave as a predicator. Book is the thing that was given, so it's the object, direct object. And him, we discussed the function of him. Him is the direction of the given. So it's the direction where the given goes. The book is the thing that gets given. It's the direct object, whereas him is the indirect object. In we drove her crazy. We also have drove as the predicator, and crazy. We did something to her. We caused her to get crazy. So what is this her? Is this still the direction of the action? We drove her crazy. No, her is the person to whom we made an action. So her is our object. Okay, so we call these pronouns here, him, her, them, us, as objective pronouns. So in this case, we caused her to change her mood. Her is the direct object of this sentence. Crazy refers back to her. Crazy is a predicative complement, but in relation to the object. It's an objective predicative complement. Okay, so the subject is doing something to her. So if the subject is doing something to her, her is the object of the doing, is the object of the driving someone crazy. Okay? And crazy, as I said, is a predicative complement of an objective nature. Can you recall all these concepts? Is this okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I showed you these patterns, okay, of canonical structures. We have these 5 patterns. From the most basic to the most complex, we have the intransitive clauses, which are basically 2 patterns, subject and predicate, or subject, predicate, and predicative complement. And we have the transitive clauses, which have objects, okay? So subject, predicate, and direct object, or subject, predicate, and indirect object. Subject, predicate, indirect object, and direct object. In this case, we have both. Or subject, predicate, direct object, and predicative complement. Okay, so these are the 5 patterns, each given by an example. I run, subject, predicate. I am a runner, subject, predicate, and predicative complement. I am predicator, I, predicator, am a runner, predicative complement. Subject, predicator, I, teach, teach as a predicator. English, direct object. Okay. Could be, for example, I teach at UFMA. In this case, I would have subject, I, teach, predicator, and at UFMA, indirect object because we have a preposition. Okay. I teach him syntax. So subject I, predicator teach, indirect object him, or I teach you syntax. You would be the indirect object. And syntax, what I teach. So direct object. And finally, subject, predicator. I made them direct object because I'm causing them to get angry. So I'm acting over them. Subject, predicator, direct object, and the predicative complement angry, okay, or any other adjective that would describe them, okay. These are the 5 canonical structures, and I guess we stopped here last class. So if you know these canonical structures, you are able to turn any non-canonical structure into canonical by uh, manipulating the structures that you come across in exercises, okay? And this is one of the most elementary but necessary tasks to make clauses, complex sentences, full of clauses, simpler to get analyzed, okay? So we are now going to see the difference between clause and sentences, okay? Intransitive and transitive clauses can be joined together to form more complex sentences. A sentence can be a clause, and then we call it a clausal sentence. But not all sentences are clauses. Some sentences are what we call complex sentences. They are made up of clauses, 2 or more, okay, normally joined either by a coordinator or a subordinator, okay. So these clauses will be connected by coordinators and subordinators that in our group of words, when we studied parts of speech, we call them the conjunctions, okay. Remember that in our approach we decided to split conjunctions, the category conjunctions, into coordinators and subordinators, and we call them, if they have more than one clause, we call them compound sentences, okay. Questions about this nature? All uh, clauses, sorry, some sentences are clausal, but not all sentences are clauses. Some of them have more than one, okay? And then in this case, we call them compound sentences. Compound sentences are 2 or more clauses joined by conjunctions, joined by either coordinators, if they are coordinated clauses, or subordinators, if they are subordinated clauses. Now, when do you know if a clause is coordinated or subordinated? When one of them is meaningless without the previous one or without the next one. Okay, so if there is a relationship of dependence for meaning, then we have subordination. Okay, so take uh, take this. All clauses are sentences, but sentences can have more than one clause. All clauses are sentences when they have independent meaning, okay. This is what I mean. Subordinated clauses, all coordinated clauses are sentences, subordinated clauses are not, okay. But sentences have more than one, can have more than one clause. We call them compound. I watched the game, clause 1. Coordinator and it was exciting, clause 2. Well, if I tell you it was exciting, do you understand it? Grammatically, is there a problem with it was exciting? Do you see any structural problem in the clause in green? It was exciting. Do you understand it? You may get a bit confused about it. What does it refer to? But I mean, is the structure okay? Subject, verb, and complement. It was exciting. It's the same as saying this is a cup, right? So you have a subject, a verb mediating the relationship of the subject and and the object, and a complement, the object in this case. Exciting, the adjective phrase. Okay, so we have 2 independent clauses. Okay, I watched the game. Do you understand when I tell you I watched the game? You may not know what game I'm talking about. But structurally, is there a problem with this sentence, with this clause? I watched the game. Or is it meaningful for you? What do you think? Another example. I correct the test. Is it meaningful for you? I corrected the test. Is it meaningful? Am I still in the room? Do you still hear me?
It depends. Maybe I cannot pinpoint what test you are referring to
Uh-huh.
or what game you are referring to.
I
So
get
in
your
that
point.
case, it doesn't make a sense.
Mm-hmm. I get your point. So let me make things clear. I want you to think structurally, not semantically, okay? Because what you're saying is right, okay? It's the reference is confusing because you may not know what test I'm talking about, but this is an issue for semantics, okay? So the reference, what is the referent of what you're saying? I want you just to think structurally, think syntactically. When I say I correct the text, sorry, yes, I correct the text. Is this syntactically incomplete or complete in terms of meaning? I corrected the test.
I guess it's complete.
It's complete. Syntactically, yes. You may not even know what test I'm talking about, but the elements in the clause are there. All the required elements are there. A subject, a verb, a complement. A subject, in this case, a subject, a verb, and an object. Okay. And but if I tell you, for example, it was difficult, do you think it's syntactically complete? It was
Mm,
difficult.
no,
When I tell you, remember the example from the guy in the video, it's raining. Is it meaningful? When I tell you it's raining, is it meaningful for you?
it is.
But what does it refer to?
Yeah, but this is where I am confused because in the other examples you said that semantically it was not meaningful, but syntactically was. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like confused about those two spectrums of it.
Yeah, so let's disconsider semantics for a while. Okay? Then we go back to semantics to understand subordination, but for a while consider only the skeleton of the sentence. I mean, are there all the elements when I say it is raining? Is it syntactically complete? We are used to this sentence and we do not question what it refers to, do we? When someone tells us it's raining, remember the guy questioning, but what is raining? The weather is raining, the rain is raining, clouds are raining. We do not question
Oh,
that. We are
I
used
see.
to the structure. Now, when I say it was difficult, do you think it's a very different nature from it is raining?
No, because it has to refer to something else.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know for certain what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's raining as well. It refers to something else that we don't know how to name. We don't know if the weather, if water, whatever, but we understand the clause, the sentence, it is raining as a description of the weather. In the same to the same extent here, when I say it was exciting or it was difficult, we may not even know what it refers to, but we know that something was exciting, something was difficult, something was hard, something was beautiful. So we have a pronoun which works as a noun, and nouns can work either as subjects or objects. So we have a subject, we have a verb, and we have another noun or an adjective that is a complement for this noun, is in a relationship with this noun mediated by the verb. So we have subject, verb, and complement. Syntactically, it's complete. It may be ambiguous. But ambiguous is different from meaningless. Okay? Do you
Now I
understand my
get it.
point?
Yeah, now
Um,
I get it completely.
mhm. Ambiguous is not meaningless, it's too meaningful. It's too meaningful. It's too much meaningful. You don't know what meaning to decide upon, but it's ambiguous. So there is a meaning. Now, when I get these two, I watch the game and it was exciting. I have two clauses that are meaningful on their own. Okay, it was exciting. Oh, what was exciting? The party was exciting. The game was exciting. You only know when you join the two clauses together with a coordinator. Okay, and then you know that it refers back to the game. But you understand it was exciting. If you come in the middle of the conversation and you know the topic of the conversation, and somebody says it was exciting, you know exactly what the person is talking about. This and, or better speaking, all the coordinators will help you glue the context with the description of the thing. So the coordinator works to glue like a cement to put bricks together. Okay, so brick number one, a brick of information. I watched the game. And brick number two, the game described by it was exciting. So here we have a coordinator. Now take a look at the second example. I invited her to go to the mall that has just opened. Okay, think of these. I invited her. It's the first clause. I invited her. Okay, clause number one. Go to the mall. Clause number two. I invited her to go to the mall. Consider this as the first part. That is in the middle of has just opened. If I tell you has just opened without the it, do you understand it?
No,
It's the same as I say was exciting. Was exciting is not a clause. It was exciting is a clause. But was exciting is not. Now, since I do not have a subject here, what I have here is a relative pronoun, okay? Then the that, besides a relative pronoun, is also a subordinator because that refers back to the mall. That will glue the two notions that somebody was invited to go and that this place described by the that, the mall, has just opened. If I tell you has just opened, or if I tell you has just started, teacher, what has just started? The class has just started. The semester has just started. What has just started? So if you drop and put period in the first example, meaning is preserved. I watched the game, period. It was exciting. You have a full pack of information. I watched the game, and the game was exciting. I can use the it just for stylish reasons. Now, if I put period here, if I drop the that and put period here, do I still have meaning? I invited her to go to the mall. Period. Has just opened. What is the connection? What is the connection? That has just opened has no independent meaning. If I say the mall has just opened, then okay. But that has just opened, using that as a relative pronoun, is not meaningful on its own. So that's why I say this that connects idea number one and idea number two is a subordinator because this second clause is of a subordinated nature in relation to the first one. Do you understand this? Can you picture this? Can you figure this out? In the first example, put a period. I watched the game, period. It was exciting. I did my homework, period. I got a good grade. So I did my homework and I got a good grade. That's okay. Now let's consider cases with that, with subordinators. I invited her to go to the mall, period. That has just opened. Is it possible to put a period here? In, I don't know if you see my.
Can you say that again? I couldn't visualize. Oh, right there.
Can I
Okay.
put a period here and a capital letter here, and this sentence is okay?
It seems weird to me, but I have a
Seems
feeling.
weird. We need a pronoun. Relative pronouns like these cannot start a sentence. I invited her to go to the mall. That one, that, then I need another that as a relative clause, has just opened. Then maybe okay. But you see how many changes I have to do in the structure to make it with independent meaning. So just putting periods here, if I just put a period, forget the end, put a period, and put a capital letter. Completely meaningful. Now go here, come here, and drop the that. Put a period, put a capital letter. Is it meaningful? I invited her to go to the mall. Has just opened. What has just opened? You see? So the second part here, the second part here is what I call a subordinated clause because it has no independent meaning. It depends on being connected with the first one, clause number one, clause number two. Oops, sorry, clause number two. And I depend on this kind of bridge. That is a bridge that will connect number one to number two. In this case, that is a relative pronoun. Why do I call it a relative pronoun? Because it establishes a relation between something that was mentioned in the first clause and that is referred back in the second clause. The mall has just opened. Do you understand it better now?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay. So this is all about clauses and sentences and being coordinated or subordinated. So being coordinated means each clause has an independent meaning. It has an independent existence. And when I say independent meaning, please think of them syntactically. If they have all the elements, if they have the structure, okay? And polysemy, ambiguity is not a criteria, okay? The criteria is structural. We are talking about syntax, so the criteria is structural. It's not semantical. Now, subordinated clauses are those that structurally lack some element of the traditional canonical clause. So it's time to practice some canonical clauses. I'll give you a list of sentences made up of clauses, of course. I want you to determine if they are, well, if they are clausal sentences, I mean, sentences made up of only one clause, you just decide if they are canonical or non-canonical. If they are canonical, it's okay. Just leave them as they are. And if they are non-canonical, I want you to, how can I say, rewrite them, rearrange them in order to make them canonical. Let me just stop sharing the screen for a moment. I'll open an exercise list here. Just give me a moment. before we advance in verbs, before we talk about verbs, I want you to do some practice. I guess it's not something to send you. Well, if you would like, I can send them for you by means of Google Drive. But I think in on the screen you can do that. Okay. Let me share the screen again. So look here. I want you to rewrite the sentences, turning the clauses that constitute the sentences, when necessary, into canonical. Then analyze them syntactically, finding the subject, the predicate, the predicator, and, if there are, the predicative complements or the objects. Okay, if there are any. Okay, if there are objects, find the objects. Tell whether they are direct or indirect. If there are predicative complements, tell where the predicative complements are. We can do the first one together, okay? And then we move to the next other seven. Okay, I want you to try to do them. Okay, you can exchange ideas with each other, but I want you to try to do them on your own before we check. So let's look at the first one. I'll zoom here. Mr. Buck donated the wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. Do you know what a wishbone is? Is that one that we break in Thanksgiving dinners? Okay. If you are curious about that, you can check Google images about the wishbone. It's a bourbon. Well, Mr. Buck donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. First task here is to find the subject and the predicate to decide if this is a clausal sentence or a compound sentence. And if it's a compound sentence, we have to make it a clausal sentence. So where is the subject? This is kind of easy for you. I'm pretty sure of that. Mr. Buck donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. Well, if we find the verb capsule, normally we'll find the subject on the left and the predicate is the verb capsule and whatever comes after it. Where's the verb capsule? In number one, the verb is donated. So let's say this is the predicate. Oops. So this is the predicate. Let's paint the predicate blue. No, not gray. And Mr. Buck is the subject. So let's write subject here. Let me jump. Oops. Subject. And this whole thing here is the predicate. Big P. Now, with a small p, I'll say it's a predicator here. Why is donated the predicator for the predicate donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History? Is there another verb in this predicate? Hey guys, you there?
Hello. Yes. Can you repeat, please?
Why do I say that donated is a predicator? Let's call it predicator. Why do I say donated is the predicator here? Why is it the predicator? What
because
is the
it's the
concept? Yeah.
main verb.
Yeah, it's the main because it's the only. Yeah. Uh, the predicator is always the main verb. Okay. If there are more than one, like in compound verb tenses, for example. But here, what I have is simple past. In simple past, affirmative. What I have is only one verb inflected in the simple past. So it's also the predicator. Now, in this predicate, how many objects are there? Mr. Buck donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. This whole thing in gray is the predicate. And inside it, I'll tell you, it's information, it's not a question. There are objects. Where are they?
Teacher is freezing up a bit for me. I think it's my connection, so I'm not quite getting what you're
Oh,
trying to say. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about that.
okay. Do you all the rest of the students? Do you hear me? Is it freezing as well? Is it freezing for you? The audio? Can you write down in the chat if your connection is okay? If my voice is arriving?
Tá normal aqui, professor.
Tá boa a conexão aí?
Aqui sim.
Ok. Vamos lá, vamos raciocinar aqui. Eu tenho a seguinte sentença, que pode ser ou não clausal, tá? Clausal sentence. Mr. Buck donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. O que eu estou passando aqui para vocês é meio que um how to do, né? Um tutorial how to do synthetical analysis. First thing I have done is locating the verb capsule. Why did I do that? Because when I locate the verb capsule, to the left, normally I have the subject, and to the right, including the verb capsule, I have the predicate. So here, subject, Mr. Buck. Let me use colors. Subject, Mr. Buck. And predicate, all this part in gray. Donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. Now, step number 2. Step number 1 is finding the subject and the predicate. Step number 2, find the predicator. Remember, we looked for the verb capsule. Go to the verb capsule and check if there is more than one verb. If there is more than one verb, the predicator is the main verb. If there's only one verb, the predicator is that one, is that main verb. In this case, the predicator is donated. Now, I have to find the objects or the predicative complements. There should be at least one object or a predicative complement. Do you see objects in this predicator? Who donates? Donates something to someone, isn't it? What are the objects here?
Wishbone.
Wishbone. So a wishbone is a noun phrase. Do you agree with that? That a wishbone is a noun phrase? Because wishbone is a noun. So a wishbone is a noun phrase that works as... Victor is not... I think it's your connection, Victor. Maybe if you leave and come back, try it, please. So a wishbone is an object Is there any other object? So let's say that a wishbone is an object. What kind of object is this? Is this a direct or indirect object? Do you see any preposition mediating the relationship between the verb to donate and the wishbone? Is there any preposition in the middle of this action of donating? Who donates? Donates something. So it's a direct object. Do you agree? Estão conseguindo acompanhar o raciocínio, gente? Tá tudo bem? Por que que é objeto direto aqui? Dá um feedback aí, gente.
Tá dando de ouvir direitinho.
Ok, e o raciocínio? Ouvi, ok. Vocês me ouvem? Vocês me entendem? Do you understand what I'm doing here? Why a wishbone is a direct object, not indirect? Who donates? Donates something. Okay? Now I want you to find the other object. I'll tell you, there is another object in this sentence. Where is it?
Can you repeat, please?
Okay. What we are doing here is syntactical analysis. We are finding subject, predicate, we have found the predicator, and now we found a wishbone as the direct object. I told you, I gave you the information that in this sentence, there is another object. I want you to find it. Who donates? The verb is to donate. Donate something. What did Mr. Buck donate? He donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. There is another object here. Where is it?
The museum.
The museum. Just this? Can I do that? Or should I consider everything here because it's a proper name? We have to consider this as only one element, okay, because Museum of Natural History with capital letters is a proper name. So this is another object. I'll paint it purple. And I call it direct or indirect object. What did Mr. Buck donate? He donated a wishbone. Do you see a preposition? Nope. Thus, you have a direct object. Now, who did Mr. Buck donate the wishbone to? Is there a preposition now?
Yes.
He donated the wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. We have an indirect object. Now, this is a very, how can I say, complex way of thinking. What did he donate? Did he donate to? I don't like this. I say it's better to understand if you consider that the relationship between the verb and the direct object is of a direct nature. It's not, there's no intermediate between them. Now, the relationship between the verb and the indirect object is of an indirect nature, which means there is an indirect relationship between them. And let me try to be more precise, more accurate. Uh, the direct object, just a moment, I have to close the door. The direct object here is the thing that gets donated. Now, the Museum of Natural History is the direction where the giving, where the donating goes. So there is a kind of movement of the wishbone in direction of the museum. You see what I mean when I say indirect, an indirect notion? There is a movement in the verb. The verb, the indirect object, is suffering an action. Okay? So we have done the syntactical analysis of number one. What basically I asked you to do was to find the subject, that's okay, the predicate, it's a consequence of finding the subject, the predicator, which is the head of the predicate, it's here, the predicative complements. If so, it's not the case here, but instead we have found two objects, direct and indirect. Okay? Do you feel in the mood to try number two? Let's try number two. I'll send you this document, okay? So that you can try it and maybe share it with me. Let's save this. I'll put it in your Google Drive. Give me just a moment. Do you all have access to the Google Drive? Just a moment. I'm trying to upload. The file is syntax exercises 1. I'll link it there in the classroom. I'll send it through the chat, okay? Do you all see the file in the chat?
Sim, professor.
Okay. So download it, please, and try to do from number 2 on. After the final song, the drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd. First of all, do you think this order is usual? Oops, you are not seeing the screen. I'm sorry. Let me share again. Okay, number 2. Look here. After the final song, the drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd. Do you think this order is usual with the comma? Is this what you learned about a canonical clause? Do you think this is canonical? Is there a problem? What would you change? Think of subject, verb, complement. Is it easy to separate this into subject and predicate in this order? Or would you change the order to make it easier to separate subject and predicate? We have an adverbial expression after the final song, starting the sentence. How would you rewrite this to make it easier? We know that this is non-canonical because we have a comma in the middle. This is an adverbial phrase, isn't it? Because after is an adverb. After the final song. Do you need this to analyze the sentence? Couldn't you do this? Cut, paste. Do you think it's better to analyze now? Estão seguindo aí, gente, a manipulação que eu fiz?
Sim.
Por quê? Do jeito que tava, horrível de analisar. Achar sujeito e predicado. After the final song, aí você vai ter um sujeito no meio, the drummer, né? Vai ter o predicado e depois vai ter que voltar na locução adverbial after the final song. Locução adverbial também conhecida como adverb phrase. O que eu fiz? Uma manipulação para tornar canônico. Ok? So, after the final song, cut, paste. E agora, eu tenho aquela estruturinha SVC, sujeito, verbo, complemento. The drummer held his sticks at the crowd after the final song. Tá numa estrutura mais natural do inglês, mais próxima do canônico.
Yeah.
Uhum. Analisa isso aí para mim, então. Vamos voltar no roteiro. Primeira coisa a analisar é o quê? Achar os elementos constituintes da sentença. Os dois mais básicos, que são... Quando eu falo de uma sentença, eu estou falando de subject and predicate. Qual o macete para achar? Gente, é tão básico que vocês não estão a fim de fazer, é isso? É tão simples que tá tedioso? Ou eu que estou falando de maneira complexa sobre uma coisa simples? Achem para mim na frase número 2, sujeito e predicado. Quem tiver vergonha de falar, escreve no chat. The drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd after the final song. Onde está o sujeito e predicado aqui, gente? Me ajuda aí.
O sujeito é the drummer.
Good. Vamos usar o mesmo padrão, tá? De cores. Azul para o sujeito. The drummer. Predicado. É o resto, né? Predicado é o resto. Joga em colchetes e pinta de cinza para ficar igual o outro lá. Predicado é essa parte em cinza. Ok. Where is the predicator? Where's the predicator? Relembra o conceito de predicator. Quem consegue dizer para mim qual é o conceito de predicator? Predicator is the word in charge of the predicate. O que isso quer dizer? Basicamente é a mesma coisa que dizer it's the verb capsule. Or, in fact, not the verb capsule, it's the verb, the main verb. What is the main verb in hurled his sticks at the crowd after the final song? How many verbs do you see here?
Hurt.
Hurt. It looks like a verb, doesn't it? There's an inflection here with finally D given the past. So this red thing here we'll call the predicator. Okay, I'm following the same structure of the first analysis using colors. Okay, so in red, what you can read here is the predicator. Now, how about the other black elements in the sentence? His sticks at the crowd, and the orange one. Let's not use orange for now, because you may think it's the direct object and it's not. Let's choose another color. Okay, his sticks at the crowd after the final song. For each of these elements, we should give a function, a syntactic function. The drummer hurled his sticks. These sticks were hurled at the crowd. And he did it after the final song. So we have basically three elements to provide a syntactical analysis. The drummer held his sticks. What kind of function do you think this is? Object, complement, predicative complement. What does it look like? Is his sticks referring back to something in the sentence? Can I say it's a predicative complement? Do you see any reference back? Or are the sticks being hurled? And then it would be an object, or they would be objects. Vamos lá, gente. As baquetas aqui, o que ele fez? Em bom português, ele atirou as baquetas para as pessoas da plateia. E aí? His sticks, as baquetas, o que elas são?
Object.
The object. Direct or indirect?
Direct.
Direct. So let's paint them with this kind of orange. Vitor, when you say give up, you mean the class today, the connection, don't you? Okay, some days things do not work as we want to. Okay, but you can always see the recording, okay, Vitor? I beg your pardon for, I really apologize for what's happening. I think it's something with your connection, okay? Don't forget to watch the video, maybe later. Okay, so his sticks is the object. Does it look like direct or indirect object? You have answered, I think.
Direct.
Because there is no preposition between the verb to hurl and the sticks. There's no mediation. The drummer did something to the sticks directly. The sticks are not the direction. Now, if he hurled, which is similar to throw the sticks, it was at someone. Where is the direction of his hurling or throwing?
The crowd.
Yes, at the crowd. So the crowd is also an
Object. Indirect.
object, but this is indirect. Very good. Now I have a problem. After the final song, well, Song is a noun phrase, but final song is a more complex noun phrase. The final song is also a noun phrase, but when I put after the final song, after is more important to understand this. What I have here, would you say is a noun phrase or an adverbial phrase? What is the function of after the final song? Would you understand the sentence without this piece of information? The drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd. Do you understand it?
Yes.
So now consider this after the final song. This is just extra piece of information to give you the notion of when he did that. In good Portuguese, this would be what we call adjunto adverbial de tempo. So this is just to tell you when the situation happened. And the head of this phrase is an adverb, so I call it an adverbial phrase. Okay? Let's choose another color for it. Maybe this. I don't know. This one. And I'd say that this is an adverb phrase. This is adverb phrase because the head is an adverb. This is what some textbooks call time expression. Remember that when we use present simple past, we normally use a time expression. I had dinner at 9 yesterday. At 9 yesterday is an adverbial phrase. Okay? Just to give you an idea, yesterday is an adverbial phrase. To give you an idea of when the action happened or how the action happened. He wrote the poem passionately. Passionately is an adverbial phrase. It will describe the way he wrote the poem. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So I'll leave the other exercises for you, okay? To I'll let you do the other ones for next class. We do not have much time to finish this. So today I'll finish like here. I want you to think of these two exercises that we have done together. Maybe watch the video again, okay? And try to analyze numbers 3 to number 8, finding the subject, the predicate, the predicator, the predicative complements, and so on. When I mean and so on, the adverbial phrases, the objects, direct or indirect, the predicative complements for the subject or for the object. In this case, after the final song is the when, it's the moment of his doing the action. Okay, it's the adverbial phrase. It's what we normally call the rest of the sentence, the complement, the extra information, the time expression, depending on the didactical book, depending on the textbook that you use to teach English as a foreign language. They use different naming, but the technical naming in syntax for this is adverb phrase. Okay, textbooks do not compromise with syntactic accuracy because their purpose is another. Their purpose is to teach a foreigner to speak English the easiest they can, the easiest way they can. But the technical name for this is adverb phrase. Okay, you are going to come across other different types of phrases. Think of the head. If the head is an adjective, then it's an adjective phrase. If the head is a verb, it's a verb phrase. Verb phrases are the basis of predicates. Okay. Now, I'll let you do the exercise, okay? Don't look at, I forgot when I sent the file to you, I forgot to erase the answer key for the second exercise. Don't look at that. Delete that. You are honest people. Do it on your own, okay? And we correct them together so that I can explain to you the second exercise. Don't even try. Don't even try the second exercise because you didn't have uh, explanations enough to take this challenge. Okay, if you want to do, okay, if you feel prepared for that, okay, but it's a challenge that I haven't prepared you for. Okay, do you have any questions for today? Is it understood what we have done here? I want to finish this part of syntactical analysis with you before we get into verbs and discuss verbs. Okay, any questions so far? No.
No, it's okay for me.
Okay, I hope so. So I see you on Thursday. Okay. Have a nice end of morning. If you have a next class, have a nice class. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye. See you.